Hallo und herzlich willkommen zurück zu einer weiteren Folge und eventuell die letzte oder zumindest vorletzte Folge von Witch on the Holy Night. Wir sind jetzt im letzten Kapitel, oder wir fangen jetzt das letzte Kapitel an, A Tale of the Star. Six days passed. The weather in the time sunny and clear. It first came to Cedric's attention when he was resting with Alice after spending all day cleaning.
宗十郎、今日ぐらいはバイト休みでしょ?
Oko asked him in a usual manner immediately upon entering the drawing room. It was already nighttime, approaching 9 o'clock. The afternoon sunny weather had changed abruptly, and thick clouds were visible out the window. Awoken from his nonchalant daydreaming, Sojo tilted his head to the side and replied
休み
calmly,
だけどどうして？
これから実家に戻るから用意しておいて。
I'm making a trip home in a bit, so get your things ready. Sojo's peaceful expression had grown tense the moment she appeared, unsure of what any of this had to do with him. He stole a glance at Alice, who was seated across from him. However, she looked surprised as well, her eyes widening ever so slightly as she studied the other two.
用意って何の？
He replied timidly, struggling to hide his bitterness at Oko for waiting until the cleaning was finished before deciding to show up.
用意は用意よ。1時間ぐらい歩く山の上だから寒くない格好をしろって言ってるの。
Sojo's expression only grew darker. The way she spoke made it sound
し
like
ずきくんを連れて行くの。
Alice spoke up before Sojo himself could manage to say anything. Oko brusquely asked if there was a problem.
私だってあんなとこに行きたくないわよ。けど今日ぐらいは顔を出せってうるさいから本当に顔だけ見せに行くの。宗十郎を連れて行くのは単に暇だからだけど。
Oh, sie möchte ihren Loverboy der Familie vorstellen. Oder ihr Haustier, je nachdem, wie man es interpretieren möchte. She stood tall as if challenging her roommate to oppose her decision. Alice's face was dour as she gazed back. Sojo's irritation was obvious as well as he glared at Aoko. Of course, the unspoken objection had no effect on Aoko in the slightest.
それじゃあ班になったら出かけるからね。
Having said all she wanted, Aoko disappeared from the room once again. Alice and Sojo could only sit in dumbfounded silence.
アリス、青崎の家って遠いのか？
He stared at the clock as he spoke. There were only 10 minutes to go until 1/2 past the
場所
hour.
的には三崎市の端よ。ここから電車で4駅分下った小さな山の中にあるわ。あなたの住んでいたところに比べれば丘でしょうけど。
Her expression had not changed, but her voice made it obvious she was in a poor mood. His complete oblivious to the fact only showed how clueless he truly
そ
was.
っか。今から行ったら帰ってくるのは明日になるね。
帰ってこられたらの話だけど。
Each spoke to themselves as if there were no one else in the room. Those about to embark on a journey always feel a sense of dread, and he was no
青
exception.
崎の家ってお化けでも出るのか？
Alice did not say anything in response. All she did was raise her eyes from her teacup to stare wordlessly at him.
アリス、
His question caused her to suddenly avert her eyes. Something seemed off about her today. The minute hand on the clock was about to reach 30. Bothered as he was by Alice's odd behavior, so she had no choice but to stand up from the sofa and take his
それ
leave.
じゃあ行ってくるよ。
Sochi hurried through the drawing room. Alice kept staring at his back until he was gone. Alice, also ich weiß nicht, ob sie weiß, dass sie in ihm verknallt ist, aber zumindest hat Alice hat Alice Gefühle zu ihm.
ありがとう。
Alice
ありがとう。
Gefühle zu ihm.
ありがとう。
Alice gegenüber ihm. Die Frage ist halt, wie weit diese Gefühle reichen und wie weit sie das selber tatsächlich weiß. Er hat natürlich keinen Schimmer. So viel ist klar. By the time he had changed in this room and returned to the foyer, Aoko was already waiting and ready to go. Furthermore, Alice was at her side, and they were deep in conversation. She abruptly ended their chat as soon as she descended the stairs.
それじゃあ行きましょうか。アリス、留守番よろしくね。
She responded with a simple nod. There was determination in Aoko's step as he strode to the door. Sergio made to follow her as he donned his coat in the foyer.
ほら、ぐずぐずしない。
Her words made him pick up his pace, but he stopped suddenly as if he had remembered something. He looked back at Alice as if to say that he had left the heater on in his room or some other important matter.
それじゃあ行ってくる。できるだけ早めに帰ってくるから、寝ないで待ってるんだぞ、アリス。
Alice blinked in shock at his unexpected request. Aoko looked on with arms folded, as Sergio stood waiting for a response. Bewildered, Alice finally returned to the drawing room without uttering a single word. Her only response had been the very smallest of nods. Stimmt, weil sie ja an dem Ding eingeschlafen ist. They were headed for Akikoshiro train station. The night had grown late. It was nearly 11 o'clock. A train full of tourists went by in the opposite direction before the two finally arrived at the tiny station. The surrounding area was incredibly dark and quiet. In fact, it felt less like a station and more like a small boat dock. Sochi had a hard time imagining that many people came here even during the day. It had only the absolute bare minimum necessary to greet the odd visitor. Sorry, there were no convenience stores inside. Only fields and the streetlights that dotted the road. Aoko placed her ticket in front of the attendant who sat sleeping in his chair and skimmed the train. Sorry, irgendwie Schluck auf. The last and only train back departed just after 5 past midnight. Having confirmed her options, she headed hastily out of the station. The elderly station attendant was all alone. He had dozed off with both the heater and television still turned on. As he slept, his face looked completely content. The night felt vast in its darkness. The small train station had been rendered obsolete, now that cars were commonplace. It was like a lone star shining in the night sky. Sergio thanked the attendant for his service before stepping out into the darkness. The man must have looked after the station for decades at this point, and would likely continue until the day he died. Outside the station there was little in the way of human development. It could scarcely be called a village. There was not even an area out front from cars and buses to drop people off. Their eyes were met only with a paranormal of flat fields interlaced with a lattice of footpaths. Though surely a sea of beautiful green in the summertime, during winter it was more like a wasteland. However, electric lights that felt strangely out of place illuminated one side of the dark vista. The cold only grew harsher as the night wore on. It relentlessly sniffed all sensation from the fingertips. Aoko must keep her hands in her pockets as she strode through the paths among the fields. She could feel the ground below through her boots. Its softness was unlike that of the city, and for her it brought back countless memories. She had walked this path every day in middle school after all.
あの山の真ん中あたり、家の明かりが見えるでしょ。あれがうち。
Here? She pointed out a mountain that rose up before them with her finger. Also hier oder vielleicht... Ah ne, da glaube ich nicht. The journey looked like it would take about 40 minutes on foot. For now they remained among the rice fields, and so their journey would continue beyond them. Aoko followed the path bathed in light without looking back. The path seemed to hang before them like a pier leading out into the darkness of the ocean. The closer they got to the mountain, the darker it became. All signs of the hustle and bustle of human life were absent. The dark stillness made the moon overhead seem dazzling. Its light transformed the mountain path from blackness into mere shadow. Though dark, the surroundings were not totally indiscernible. The seemingly unending path stretched on and on. Soldier, doing his best to match Aoko's pace, stole a momentary glance at the profile of her face. Did she not feel frightened in this quiet darkness, even with the moon to light the way? Her expression showed no outward sign of discomfort as she strode on in silence. In fact, this wasn't how she always looked when she was trying to act tough. He had only had a month's experience with her, but that much he knew. There was obviously something on her mind she couldn't ignore, no matter how small it might be.
青崎でもこういうところは怖いのかい?
She responded to his tentative question with a surprising nod.
こんな夜道を怖がらない人なんて普通いないでしょ。我慢できるか無視できるかの2つだけよ。そのどちらもできない人は夜に出歩かないわ。
なるほど。それじゃあどうして自分を連れてきたんだ？
言わなかった？こんな何もない道を一人で歩くのは時間の無駄でしょ。退屈しのぎに話し相手が欲しかったの。
そういえばそんなことを言ってたな。
Cedric fell into silence. He was not bothered by what she had said. Rather, he was desperately searching for something to say in response. The path through the night continued onward. Only the sound of the footsteps could be heard. Eventually, Aoko was unable to endure the silence any longer despite her best effort.
退屈しのぎに何か話してよ。
参ったな。話すようなことはないんだけど。
He felt clueless and ashamed. He had been searching unsuccessfully for a topic throughout their awkward silence. Shocked though she was, Aoko let out a gentle sigh. At least for a moment, his simple earnestness was enough to make her forget all about her troubles.
バカね。嘘でも何でもいいから、とにかく話をすればいいの。
Her blunt retort was not entirely honest. She would surely scold him if he dared to lie to her. Socho said as much, reminding her of how she had claimed to hate lies. Naturally, she did not bother responding.
仕方ない。話はないけど、聞きたいことならあった。何でもいいなら、それもいいだろ。
A slight scroll crossed her face at his suggestion, but it lasted only a moment before she returned to her previous calm state.
ま、それもいいか。どうせ、もうすぐ忘れるんだから。
She muttered her reply without making eye contact. The destination in the mountains remained hidden from them, revealing not even a hint of its form. It had bothered him ever since that night. What was the truth behind it all, and how would the two sisters' drama unfold? So she had decided to press Aoko for details.
トウコさんは何がしたかったんだ？
あれ、言わなかった？私への復讐と根源に接触することだって。根源の渦については前に少しだけ話したでしょ？
確か魔術の源だっけ？
そう。そして最終目的でもあるわ。根源の渦っていうのは全ての英知が記録された位置、全ての事柄が決定された場所、そこを見て触れて理解できれば不可能なんて言葉すら作り変えられる。伝承によって呼び名は様々だけど、要するに神様のいる位置なんでしょうね。
神様っていうのは八百万的なものじゃなく
たまにそういうこと言い出すから厄介よね。そりゃ万象に宿る神様もいるでしょうけど、これはその前、そういうのを決めた大前提みたいなものよ。そんなものの入り口がどうして岬にあったのかは知らないけど、祖父はそれを発見して新しい魔法を作り出した。でもその後に根源への道を閉ざしちゃったのよ。魔法さえ成立したのなら神様への道は消えるべきだって。多分私たちが生きてる限り解放する気はなくて、トウコはそれが腹立たしかったんだと思う。たとえ力不足で取り込まれても道があるのなら試すべきだ。自己の消滅を恐れるぐらいなら そもそも魔術なんて学ばなかった。でも祖父は礎になろうとする一切認めなかった。もっと強力な跡継ぎが生まれるまで根源の解析は許可しない。跡継ぎに魔法は譲るけれど根源への道だけは閉ざしていたのよ。瞳子の気持ちもわかるけど、私は祖父に賛成だわ。根源なんてものに興味はないし、第一今まで一人も生還者がいないんだもの。それが本当に神々の座なのか保証もないし。
Her mood gradually soared as she spoke, and toward the end it sounded more like a list of complaints. Despite her words, however, part of Aoko was unable to agree completely with her grandfather's decision. So she took note and followed up with a question about something he found strange.
青崎、一人も生還者がいないってどういうことだ？
根源に触れて帰ってきた者は一人もいないの。世界規模でね。触れれば即消滅。人間程度の魂だと触れた瞬間に元に戻るとか、根源に取り込まれるとか。なんでどんなに歴史に名を残した魔術師でもあれにだけは触れていないわ。
それじゃあどうしてそこがそういう場所だってわかるんだ？
そりゃ中に入って伝えた人がいたからでしょ。
Ihr Großvater.
でも生還者はいないって。
だからそういう人たちは中で神様にでもなっちゃったんじゃない？
He spoke very matter-of-factly, as if it was only a minor detail about something that had happened the other day.
そうなればこっちに帰ってくる必要はないでしょうし、もしかすると単に帰ってこられないだけかもね。ま、神様って位置づけが私たちが思っているようなものとは思えないから、あまり幸福そうには思えないけど。
Whether they succeed or fail in their endeavor, those who reach the root become unable to return to the normal world. Maybe the first person to become God felt lonely and spread the word about the swirl of the root in order to have others join them there. Or maybe they had so much work to do as God, they just needed some help. None of it made any sense, no matter how long Sochi thought about it all.
瞳子さんはそうなりたかったのかな？
まさかあの人は単に知りたかっただけよ。その後に残された人たちのことなんて興味はないの。昔から目標に没頭しても成果を愛する人じゃなかったから。正直なところそのあたり姉貴は突き抜けてるわ。本当の天才ってのはああいう非人間のこと言うのよ。苦労して作り上げたもののその後を全く考えないんだから。
Sochi wasn't sure whether she spoke out of disgust or respect.
でもそのくせ面倒見はいいっていうか、未来のことは考えないのに今あるものには何にでも興味を持つんだから。
Marco praised her sister's generous, well, even while cursing her very being, her every being. Though her tone of voice was perfectly pleasant and lacked any audible animosity.
そうだね。それに瞳子さんはこっちの方が好きみたいだったから。
As soon as he spoke, he was struck by the meaning of Ako's earlier words. I don't care about the root. He realized that she must feel the same way as Toko. Still, there was one thing that had been bothering Soichi regarding Toko.
そういえばカエルにするって一体。
He ventured to bring up the topic no one had been talking about since it occurred. It had always seemed taboo to bring up, so the sense of transgression made him hesitate as he finally sought the truth.
一体も何も言葉通りの意味だけど、もともとルーン使いには変身術がある分瞳子にはかかりやすかったみたいよ。
いや、そんな当然のように言われても。
His stomach shivered from the stress of not knowing how to respond to her cavalry attitude.
まあ、それでどうやって？
He did not particularly want to ask, but it was the natural extension of his current line of inquiry. Marco stared straight ahead as she lectured him, completely ignoring the pain expression on his face.
2種類あって精神を入れ替えるのか肉体を再編成するかね。精神だけを入れ替えるのは簡単な分すぐ元に戻れるわ。夢を見ているようなものだし、ちょっとしたショックで元の体に意識が戻ってくれるから。厄介なのは肉体そのものを変えてしまう方で、この場合術が切れるまで元に戻るのは難しいでしょうね。私がやったのは その再編成の方みたい。多分塩基配列を組み替えるんだろうけど、もうちんぷんかんぷん。魔術が科学的な説明するのもナンセンスだし。
Arco spoke as if it were not her own actions she were discussing. Apparently she had been borrowing magic from her future self and could not use any of it in the present. Her actions had also created a looming threat that would come back to haunt them in 10 years' time. Trying to comprehend even a fraction of all the intricacies involved made Sochi's head hurt.
あと数年後には青崎はそんなこともできるのか。末恐ろしいな。
Sochi was being completely honest with her. In response, Arco only stared at blankly, eyes open wide. She looked like she wanted to scold him.
アリスならそれぐらい今でもできるわよ。
なんだと。
やっぱりね、そんなことだと思ってたわ。前にも言ったでしょ。アリスの部屋のもろもろの人形はあの子に逆らった執事たちの慣れの果てなんだから。
まさかアリスはそんなことしないぞ。
いやいや、これが私もね、付き合い始めて半年はそう思ってたんだけどね。
The light cheerful laughter that followed only made her statement all the more chilling.
青崎、その冗談笑えないぞ。
あら、私は笑わせる気なんてこれっぽっちもないんだけど。
Oh, that guy. She was clearly making fun of him at this point, unable to determine how serious to take what she had said. Sochi's mood and expression only grew darker. His obvious dejection made Arco smile with satisfaction.
あそこであんたの言葉にうなずいちゃうあの子がそこまで魔女になれるはずもないんだけど。
She gazed at him as they walked, her chest warm with emotion. The path they strode had shifted from footpaths through rice fields to a road climbing the mountain. It was surprisingly wide, given the mountain's small size, though with no sources of trees on either side. The forest road led them up to the top of the mountain. Wheel marks were etched into the dirt underfoot. No doubt the Aozaki family came through here by car. The only light at the summit was that of the moon and stars overhead. The bald mountain top lacked streetlights and houses as well as vegetation. Near the top, the incline of their path began to even out. The road ended abruptly at the house, still a good way away before them. It was too far to make out the shape of the building, but Sochi assumed it was Aozaki's house, based on the warm light coming from the windows.
ところで、君が家で団らんしている間、自分は何をしていればいいんだろう。
Sochi had a hard time imagining Aoko engaging in any sort of family bonding time, but with effort he could imagine that it must be a joyful time for her. He did not want to ruin that by intruding, which is why he brought up the subject now. If he had to, he would not have minded spending the night camping outside. Her reply was not what he had expected.
君はうちの離れに行って祖父に会うの。多分そこで今日までの記憶を消されるわ。
She stopped dead in her tracks as she spoke. The frank and open attitude she had shown all night was now gone. Sochi was too shocked to take another step forward. He turned back to look at her, having been walking a little ways ahead and realized she was not joking. He stood still, taking in the glaring silence. Naturally, Aoko was the first to resume speaking.
驚かないのね、あなた。
いや、驚いたけど。でも、それは初めから決まっていたことだ。
退屈しのぎは本当よ。それとは別に、祖父があなたを連れてこいって言ったの。
Sochi nodded in acceptance. He was quiet and unchanging as the night around him. Aoko found it thoroughly irritating.
それじゃあ行こうか。立っていると寒い。
宗十郎。
Aoko's voice stopped him in his tracks, just as he was about to resume walking towards the house.
あなたはそれでいいの？記憶を消されるってことは、今までの1ヶ月がなくなるのと同じなのよ。
Sochi murmured in understanding. The thought of returning to his old self and forgetting about Aoko, Alice and the mansion altogether felt like giving up a treasure that he had discovered. But he didn't feel that he was unable to let them go either.
確かにそれは嫌だな。青崎と知り合ってからの1ヶ月は楽しかったし、アリスとも約束したばっかりだし。でも青崎が消えるわけじゃないんだろう。冬休みが終わればまた学校で会えるじゃないか。
There was no answer from Aoko. She did not tell him that he was not the only one who would be losing their memory. An intervention by her grandfather would erase her own memories of Sojiro too. Once it was done, they would most likely never even speak with one another again. Each would become just another random student at school. Even if they did happen to meet by some lucky circumstances, things would not be the same as they were now. She could not deny that a small part of her was going to miss him.
そうなら行きましょう。
She rationalized her feelings away instead of processing them and set off once more towards the house. Sojiro followed along at her side. It was a matter of several minutes before they reached their destination. She was irritated to see that the expression on his face looked exactly the same as it always did. Forgetting their time together was sad for her, if only slightly so, but it did not seem to bother him in the least.
そりゃね、平気で自分の腕を叩き折れるやつにそんな繊細なこと期待していないけど。
Halfway through muttering her complaint, Aoko suddenly remembered, or rather she realized something. Something about the one-time werewolf killer before her, and the mystery of who Sojiro Suzuki really was. The older version of herself that night had memories and knowledge of Sojiro beyond what she knew now. She knew something about the seemingly average boy's mistakes. Why he was able to do what he did, and why he was raised in the mountains in the first place. She had always wondered, but never had the chance to ask him about it until now. Once her grandfather was through with him, all those questions she had about Sojiro would be gone too. There was no point in asking right before they had their memories erased, but then again, she might as well, if she was going to forget everything anyway. This was her only chance to demand an explanation for his contradictory behavior.
待って、私も最後に一つ聞きたいことがある。あんた、山でどんな生活を送ってたの？
The question stopped him on the spot. She had never seen him make such a pained expression.
つまらないよ、そんな話は。
面白い話は期待してないって言ったでしょ。どうせ私も宗十郎のことは忘れるんだから、それぐらい話してくれてもいいんじゃない？
Her words and demanding gaze caused him to lift his head in surprise.
忘れるって、青崎が？
当然よ。あんたが忘れても私が覚えているんじゃ意味がないでしょ。言ってこいで公平じゃない。なんでそんな顔するの？
Sojiro's hands shot up to cover his mouth in response. He had no idea what kind of look he had been giving her, but he had a feeling it had been pretty pathetic.
そうか。青崎も忘れるのか。そこまでは考えていなかった。
ええ。そして私はあなたとは会わなくなる。断定はできないけど、まず。
True, this would be their last conversation. The way she spoke made it obvious, even if he had been unaware of what awaited him. Sojiro might see her walk by at school and feel a desire to talk, but they would have no reason to interact. Even if he tried to strike up a conversation, he knew she was not the type to bother much with other people. More importantly, he was not the type to strike up conversations in the first place. Not the way he had been a month ago, at least. That was when he finally realized how cool it could be to forget something. Not only would he forget what they had done together, he would not so much as know her name or even be aware that she existed. Even if he felt strangely drawn to her, he would never understand why. Even if some lucky twist of fate brought them together, things would never be the same. The walk that night was no less than a funeral for them both. He would essentially kill the person he knew as Aoko Aozaki, and she would kill the person she knew as Sojiro Shizuki. Afterward nothing would remain. Ich würde sagen, an dem Punkt beende ich dann nochmal hier diese Folge. Dann haben wir noch mindestens eine weitere Folge zumindest. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und bis zum nächsten Mal. Ciao.